In 1945, George Orwell wrote a book called Animal Farm. He tells the story of a group of farm animals who rebel against their human farmer and set up their own society. Sounds like a children's story, right? Well, not really. You see, all the animals in this farm, allegorical representations of Russian leaders during the Russian Revolution and the Stalinist era. And you know what's even more interesting? He did that 80 years ago. And the story of Animal Farm is basically the story of the Russian Revolution betrayed. As soon as Stalin died in 1953, the true believers and the opportunists turned on each other. In his book, he wrote, "The creatures outside looked from one to another, and from another to the first, hardly knowing which was worse." But Orwell didn't stop there. He also predicted how we remember these stories today. But many things had happened since the fall of man. And this was not an age for believing any tale told by a creature with a clock face. The opportunists denounced the true believers as being out of touch with reality, and the true believers denounced the opportunists as being nothing but power-hungry sociopaths. Basically, everyone denounced everyone else as being worse than the dictator himself, and they spent the next 25 years tearing each other apart until the fall of the Soviet Union. When Orwell wrote this book, he was actually writing a political treatise. And the reason why he chose to write it as a children's story is because that's the only way he could get his point across. The Soviet Union had taken over much of Eastern Europe by then, and it was clear to anyone with eyes to see that totalitarianism was on the rise across the world. By that, he meant that people forget the details of these stories, but they never forget the feeling they got when they heard the story in the first place. That's why we still remember the Russian Revolution today. Even though most people couldn't tell you anything about Stalin's economic policies or foreign policy, we don't remember the details of the story. We remember how it made us feel. So Orwell wanted to warn people about what he had seen happen in Russia, but in a way that would get past the Soviet Union's censors. They're not just cautionary tales. They're warnings to us that no matter where we live, we must always be on guard against tyranny and those who would seek to impose it on us. And if you ask me, he did a pretty good job. I mean, we've seen the story of Animal Farm play out again and again in the decades since he wrote it. Just think of all the so-called progressive countries which have become full-blown dictatorships in the last few years. Countries like Venezuela, Cuba, North Korea, just to name a few. But here's what's interesting. In addition to predicting the behavior of these dictators, Orwell also predicted the behavior of the people who support them. You see, Orwell knew that there were two types of people who supported dictators. There were the true believers and the opportunists. The true believers were people like the intellectuals and the artists who genuinely believed in the dictator's message. People who willingly participated in creating a totalitarian state and enforcing its ideology on others. Then there were the opportunists. People who didn't care about the dictator's ideology one way or another, but simply used the chaos and violence as a cover to pursue their own interests. So Orwell predicted that when the dictator inevitably fell from power, these two groups would turn on each other, and that's exactly what happened in Russia. Now, this is what I find truly amazing. Orwell predicted this back in 1945. What he's saying here is that when the dictator eventually falls, those who supported him will turn on each other because everyone knows that they're all capable of terrible things. He said that his story, the story of Animal Farm, would never fade because it was written in blood. And that's why Orwell's stories will never fade. Well, that's it for today. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to subscribe.